The night she was sold, the wind cut across the prairie like a blade, and Clara Whitmore understood with sickening clarity that her life no longer belonged to her. She stood on the wooden platform with her hands clenched inside borrowed gloves, listening as men discussed her future the way they discussed cattle, by weight, usefulness, and price. Clara was 19, thin from years of careful eating, her brown hair tucked under a plain bonnet. Her eyes were the kind people overlooked because they were quiet, because they didn't demand anything. That night, those eyes stared straight ahead while her stepfather negotiated with a man whose reputation traveled faster than his shadow. Elias Crow, the ruthless rancher, the man who broke horses by starving them into submission, the man whose workers feared his temper more than the weather, the man who had buried one wife already and never spoke her name. Clara had heard the whispers. Everyone had. When her mother died, leaving behind debts and a failing homestead, Clara's stepfather didn't hesitate. He saw an opportunity. Elias Crow needed a wife, someone young enough to bear children, quiet enough not to argue, desperate enough not to run. And Clara, with no family left to defend her, fit the bill. She didn't cry when the money exchanged hands. She didn't beg. She had learned long ago that begging only taught people how much power they had over you. Instead, she followed Elias to his wagon, her small trunk rattling behind her like an afterthought. He didn't speak to her on the ride. The ranch stretched wide and unforgiving, the house at its center dark and imposing. Clara's chest tightened as they arrived. This was where her life would end, she thought, not with death but with disappearance. Inside, the house smelled of leather, smoke, and something sharper, loneliness maybe. Elias removed his coat, hung his hat, and gestured toward a chair. "You can sit," he said. His voice was low, controlled, not loud. That frightened her more than shouting would have. She sat. He poured 2 cups of water, slid one toward her, and then surprised her by sitting across the table instead of beside her. "You've heard things about me," he said. Clara nodded once. "They're not wrong," he continued. "I don't soften my words or my expectations. I don't tolerate lies, and I won't pretend I wanted a wife for love." Her hands trembled slightly. She curled them into her skirt. "I bought you," he said plainly. "That's the truth of it, but buying someone doesn't give me the right to break them." Her heart skipped. "I need an heir," he went on. "I need order in this house, and I need a woman who won't fight me every step of the way. In return, you'll have shelter, food, and protection. No one here will touch you without my say." Clara swallowed, and tonight. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes, something unreadable. "Tonight," he said, "you'll sleep." She blinked. "Sir." "There's a room down the hall. It's yours. The door locks from the inside." The words didn't make sense at first. They rattled around her head, refusing to settle. "I won't force myself on you," Elias said. "Not tonight, not ever." Tears burned behind her eyes, sudden and unwelcome. "Why?" she whispered. He stood, towering but not threatening. "Because I won't be the man people already think I am." He left her there, stunned, heart pounding like a trapped bird. That night Clara lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the house breathe around her. She waited for footsteps, for the creak of the door, for fear to be proven right. It never was. Days turned into weeks. Elias kept his word. He was distant, stern, but never cruel to her. He worked from dawn until nightfall, running the ranch with an iron hand. To the men, he was relentless. To Clara, he was careful. He assigned her no impossible tasks. He didn't bark orders. He didn't touch her. That somehow unsettled her more than cruelty would have. She learned the rhythms of the ranch, the way the wind shifted before a storm, the sound of hooves at dawn, the deep silence of nights untouched by laughter. Elias ate most meals alone. When she joined him, conversation was sparse but respectful. One evening, as she mended a torn shirt by the fire, she finally asked, What happened to your first wife? Elias stared into the flames for a long moment. She died giving birth, he said. The child didn't live either. I'm sorry, Clara said quietly. So am I, he replied, and for the first time his voice cracked. After that, something shifted. He began asking her opinions, about repairs, about supplies, about which horses were worth keeping. He listened. When she suggested rotating grazing land to preserve the grass, he tried it. It worked. The men noticed. So did Elias. You're smarter than you let on, he said one evening. She shrugged. No one ever asked before. Winter came hard and early that year. A blizzard trapped them indoors for days. When a hired hand fell ill, Clara tended him without complaint, staying up through the night. Elias watched silently from the doorway. Later, he handed her a thick blanket. You didn't have to do that, he said. Yes, she replied gently, I did. That night, as the storm raged outside, Elias knocked on her door. Her breath caught. I won't come in, he said through the wood. I just needed to say this. You've brought something back into this house. I didn't know it was gone until you did. She rested her hand against the door. What was it? Humanity, he said. Spring arrived, and with it rumors. People noticed the changes at Crow Ranch, the healthier livestock, the calmer men, the absence of shouting. They noticed Elias Crow no longer drank himself into silence. They noticed Clara riding alongside him, not behind. Some whispered she had tamed him. They were wrong. Clara didn't tame Elias Crow. She reminded him who he used to be. One afternoon, a man from town arrived, sneering, making crude remarks about Clara. Elias reacted faster than anyone expected. He threw the man off the porch and told him never to return. She is my wife, Elias said coldly, and she is owed respect. Afterward, Clara confronted him. You didn't buy me to protect me, she said. You didn't have to do that. He met her gaze. I wanted to. That was the moment she realized the truth. The ruthless rancher wasn't ruthless by nature. He had simply buried his tenderness so deeply that even he had forgotten it existed. Their marriage changed slowly, organically. One night, months later, Elias asked, Would you consent if I asked more of you? Clara considered him. The man who had given her safety when she expected violation. The man who had waited. Yes, she said, because I choose it. Love didn't arrive in a blaze. It arrived like rain on dry ground, quiet, steady, transformative. Years passed. They had children. The ranch flourished. Elias softened in ways no one thought possible. He laughed. Rarely but genuinely. He carried his daughter on his shoulders. He listened when Clara spoke always. And Clara, she grew into herself, strong, confident, respected. No one dared speak of her as property again. One evening, as they sat watching the sun dip below the fields, Clara said, You changed my life that first night. Elias took her hand. So did you. She had been sold to a ruthless rancher. But what he did that night, what he chose not to do, changed everything. Because sometimes, the most powerful act isn't possession. It's restraint. The past never stays buried on the frontier. It waits, patient as winter, for the moment to return. Clara learned that truth the morning Elias came in from the south pasture with blood on his sleeve and a look in his eyes she had not seen in years. It wasn't rage. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. There are riders coming, he said quietly as he washed his hands at the basin. Men I used to run with, men who remember me the way I was. Clara felt the chill even before he explained. Elias Crow's reputation had not come from nothing. Before grief hollowed him out, before the ranch consumed his every breath, he had survived by being harder than the land itself. Those men had known that version of him. They had benefited from it. They'll expect the same man, Clara said. Yes, he replied, And when they see I'm not, they'll think it's because of you." She did not flinch. "Then they'll have to learn the truth." The riders arrived 2 days later, 5 men, dust-caked and sharp-eyed. They laughed too loudly, drank too much, and looked at Clara as if she were a curiosity, not a person. One of them, a scarred man named Rourke, leaned back in his chair and said, "Never thought I'd see the day Elias Crow let a woman sit at the table." Elias did not rise to the bait. "Your guests," he said evenly, "behave like it." Rourke smirked. "Or what?" Clara watched Elias carefully. This was the moment, the crossroads where past and present collided. "Or you leave," Elias said. "On your feet if you're smart, on your backs if you're not." The men exchanged looks. Something shifted. They hadn't expected that answer. That night, Clara heard voices outside her window. She slipped on her shawl and stepped onto the porch, finding Elias alone beneath the stars. "You don't owe them anything," she said. "I know," he answered, "but they think I do." "Then show them they're wrong." The confrontation came at dawn. Rourke and his men tried to take horses. When Elias stopped them, Rourke laughed and said the words that cut deeper than any knife. "You went soft, Crow. Let a woman turn you gentle. That's weakness." Elias stepped forward, voice steady. "No, what I was before, that was weakness. I hid behind cruelty because it was easier than feeling." Rourke's hand moved toward his gun. Clara didn't scream, she didn't run. She stood in the doorway, visible, unafraid. "You don't get to decide who he is," she said. "You only remember who he was when it served you." The standoff ended without bloodshed, not because Elias threatened violence, but because he refused to be drawn back into it. The men left, cursing and spitting, but gone all the same. Word spread faster than wildfire. Some said Elias Crow had lost his edge. Others said he had found his soul. Spring brought trouble of a different kind. A drought threatened the valley, and neighboring ranchers began circling like wolves. One night, a fire broke out along the fence line. It was no accident. Clara organized the hands while Elias fought the flames. She rode through the night to summon help, her voice steady even when her heart pounded. By dawn, the fire was contained. The ranch stood, scarred but alive. In the aftermath, one of the older hands pulled Elias aside. "Never seen a woman like her," he said. "She didn't just save the ranch, she saved you." Elias found Clara sitting on the porch steps, ash-streaked and exhausted. He sat beside her and took her hand. "They tried to break us," he said. She smiled faintly. "They underestimated us." Years passed, marked by seasons and children's laughter. Their daughter, Margaret, inherited Clara's calm strength. Their son, Thomas, carried Elias' quiet intensity softened by kindness. The ranch became a place people sought out, not for fear but for fairness. One evening, long after the children were asleep, Clara found Elias staring out at the fields. "Do you ever think about that first night?" she asked. "Every day," he said, "because that was the night I chose who I would be for the rest of my life." Clara leaned against him. "And I chose to believe you." They stood together as the wind moved through the grass, the land stretching wide and open before them. She had been sold to a ruthless rancher. But what the world never understood was this: the man she was sold to died that first night. In his place stood someone better. And together, they built a life no one could ever take from them again.